Hi there. Today on Typical Books, I'd like to talk about the 3 books that I've read this week, a little bit of the monthly statistics, and Reading and Rumps, of course. So Reading and Rumps is the Richard Laymon Readathon, organized by Regina at Regina's Haunted Library, that I'm a co-host of, and quite a few people have actually joined. Hello to Michael at Michael's Grim Reads. He's actually joined in on the fun. There's quite a few other booktubers. I've been adding them to a playlist, which I'll link below as I find videos. So if you've made a video about Reading and Rumps or Richard Laymon this month, let me know. I finished reading Endless Night. It wasn't all that I had hoped it would be. I thought it would be like the pinnacle of insanity, which, you know, the seller, one of his first books, is like way more insane. I had a lot of fun with Endless Night. It was supposed to fulfill the prompt for week 2, which was the basement is always a bad idea. They didn't go in the basement. I figured that they would. There was a lot of upstairs. If it would have been the upstairs is a bad idea, or the attic is a bad idea, or just, yeah, the whole running from the killer thing was a bad idea for these people. But in the end, it actually turned out with not a happy ending. There's a lot of talk about the young man in this, the youngest young man, the 12-year-old boy, and his like horniness and stuff. But I didn't find it was like really overt with the young kid being like the target or the pervert in the story. The target of the pervert or the pervert in the story. It wasn't as bad as people made it out that way. But the killer in this is pretty crazy. And the killer in this would have fulfilled really well week 3's prompt. Now, I haven't put the review up on typicalbooks.com for this one yet, but I will shortly. It's been a busy week because I was attending virtually StokerCon, the Bram Stoker Awards, and the writing convention held by the Horror Writers Association each year. So I've been watching a lot of panels and such. And of course, the awards ceremony last night, so I didn't get around to writing this review, which, like I said, I will. Aside from the misconceptions I had, I thought this would be the most insane, balls out Richard Laymon book ever. The seller actually takes that award over this one. Quite a few. In the Dark is crazier than this. Quite a few are crazier than this. This had a couple things. An anomalies that I really noticed was that it's a long form Pepsi commercial, because everyone drinks Pepsi all of the time by name. And there is a whole chapter that is just shooting guns at cans. And as not a fan of guns, I'm not a gun collector or a shootist or an aficionado. It was just kind of like, okay, can we get back to the story now, please? It's strange. Now, if you want a chapter where somebody's shooting guns, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, in the film when Johnny Depp's character as Hunter S. Thompson pulls off the side of the road and just shoots a gun for a while, that's cool. This chapter was just a chore. But otherwise, it was fun to read because Richard Laymon's always fun to read, and I think I'm going to have a lot of fun with the next book for week 3. And that will be Cuts. This is awfully shiny, I know, because it is a special edition of Richard Laymon's Cuts. And this was one of the books by Richard Laymon that kind of freaked me out. This is a signed first edition of Cuts, a Cemetery Dance edition, special first edition of Cuts, limited to 1,500 signed copies. You may recall that I had this from a gift from my loving husband, who knew that Cuts was one of those Richard Laymon books that I didn't have. It was harder to find, along with Stake, which is really hard to find. And I was holding out for this one. He found this specific copy from a collector, and yeah, the rest is history. I am stoked. So I don't know if I remember it as brutally as it was when I first encountered Laymon. It was shocking stuff, right? You know, in the like 2000s, it was like pretty intense writing. And now we joke about it being kind of like a B-grade slasher stuff. But at the time it was pretty intense. I remember this being intense, and the prompt for week 3 is The Villain Slaps, because I remember this villain freaking me out so bad, creeping me out, grossing me out. Celebrate Laymon's most over-the-top baddies. Pick your favorite psycho, swamp monster, or possessed creep and share the chaos. There are a lot of really cool bad guys in Richard Laymon's work. And wow, the killer Krulls, which actually make an appearance in Endless Night in a way, as far as like The Woods Are Dark. really crazy villains. The Master of Games, really crazy villains. So yeah, I have high hopes here. In a suburb of Chicago, Albert Prince parks on a dark street thinking he's about to get lucky with Betty, only to find out that she wants cash, not romance. And Albert is a few bucks short. "Dig up the rest of the money tomorrow," says Betty, "and give me a call. We'll have a great time tomorrow night." But Albert won't be seeing Betty tomorrow night. He'll be having a great time without her, in a stranger's house, with a beautiful woman and a knife. So yeah, crazy, crazy bastards. It's always nice at the Horror Writers Association convention, StokerCon, as it is now called. It's coming up on its 10th year next year when they celebrate in Pittsburgh once again, which is exciting. I hope I can go. I'd like to go. I'm planning and crossing my fingers that I can go. But there is a President's Award named after Richard Laymon, and it's always just awesome to me to see that given out. So yeah, Richard Laymon cuts up next. So previously, I'd been speaking in the comments with Super Strange Shadow, and he mentioned Thomas Harris, and I got to thinking, wow, there's this Thomas Harris book my mom never got to read. She was a big fan. He's a great writer, and I thought, well, I'd pick it up, and I looked, it was on special, so I snatched it up, and I read it last weekend entirely. Carrie Moira by Thomas Harris. It is a crime book. It is kind of horror tinged, much like his other crime books tend to be. It's horror crime. It's like, award-winning horror, really, when you think of it. And this isn't much different. Now, Carrie Moira is a housekeeper in the United States that is an immigrant, and she is an illegal immigrant, I guess, to a certain extent. Her papers are tenuous at best, but she has a network of friends who are also in a similar position, or, also just greenskeepers, caretakers, pool guys that are a lot of immigrants. So there is a great friend and support system. And of course, they get up to some illegal shenanigans of their own. And it's really interesting to see this network of good bad guys and the network of bad guys that are also international. And I mean, if they got carded, would they be able to be here really legally anyway? Or in the US, that is? Yes. The villain in this is intense. And I say intense, but I also mean a little cartoonish. Hans Peter Schneider. He's bald, hairless, possessed, obsessed, insano that treats women very badly, likes to put them into the sex trade, with anomalies. If they're full able-bodied, he makes them not able-bodied and sells them as specialty items on the sex trade market. It's really, really gross. And he does have a liquid crematorium that it's semi-portable, even though it's a giant machine that liquid cremation takes place in. He seems to be able to move it at whim, so it kind of comes with him. So he can watch his failed projects decompose in front of him. It seems very chilling. I would say that he's sicker if there's a sickness contest with Buffalo Bill. Far sicker. But at the same time, a little cartoonish. There's scenes of him sort of crouching in a shower, blowing a death's head whistle. It would be intense maybe on screen, but I mean, unless you're really enraptured with this, if you want to take this wild ride on Carrie Moira, which I really wanted it to turn into the movie Everly quite badly. It didn't quite get that action-packed, but it's pretty cool with AK-toting housekeepers, right? I like that. But if you want to get enraptured in this, I'd say read it in one weekend, much like I did. Because keeping yourself suspended in there and not giving yourself that chance to step back and go well, he's a little bit goony, isn't he? Not giving yourself that chance helps. Staying immersed in the story really helps. So I had a fun time with it. And then I watched some of the reviews where some of the gooniness was pointed out to me. And it's true, but hey, it's all about what kind of fun you have with a book, right? And what picture it's painting in your mind while you're reading it. I enjoyed this quite a lot, and the character of Carrie Moira and her sister were really enchanting. So yeah, I had a lot of fun. Even though I would say it's a horror crime for sure, but it's more crimey. So if you're interested in crime novels, then this is a really good pick. I'm still reading No End House. It's the arc that I'm reading for June, and it's still good. It's written really well. It's gotten a little bit fantastical, a lot of bit fantastical. So it's not a typical, what I thought it would be, escape room gone wrong, like the film Haunt, which is what I kept sort of hoping it would be like. It's gotten a little bit weird, and they have gone through the looking glass, so to speak, and no one knows exactly where they are. So they're in the 6th room of the house now, and things are definitely weird. It is very much fantasy. I would say that if you're transitioning or know somebody transitioning from young adult horror and fantasy to adult horror and fantasy, this might be a good one, because so far the steaminess is pretty low. There's no real gore. It's very much more fantastical than horrific, although it is tense and very interesting. There are a lot of like dark themes going on in this book for sure, but it's not really horror yet. We'll see. I have about a quarter of it left to go. We'll see what happens. I also have another hopeful arc read for July, and that is The Girl in the Creek by Wendy Wagner. I really like the looks of this in the new books coming out list, and it was on a list, I believe it was on the Patron Picks poll, which that has a winner as well. A very different winner that I did not expect, but I'm very excited to read. So we'll see if I don't get to that. Fingers crossed, I've requested it. Never know how arcs are going to go. But yes, the patron pick poll is Requiem by John Palisano. So I'm pretty excited about this because space horror isn't something I read enough of, but it's something that I really do like. So yeah, really looking forward to this graveyard in space. It's an entire planet that is a graveyard that is haunted. So really looking forward to this. I love the cover and just the simplicity of it. I love the premise and the simplicity of it as well. And I'm looking to see where this will go. I've never read any John Palisano, so I'm excited. You may notice that the channel name has changed. I've changed some of the banners, I've changed some of the icons that go along with it, but I'm still at typicalbooks.com. The channel name on YouTube is still at typicalbooks, so that's helpful. That will stay the same. But Lydia's Books of Terror, the poll was sort of split. It was like 6 people voting for just keep it as Books of Terror as I had it experimentally at that time, and some people suggested Lydia's books because, as Tom, a longtime listener, had said, it would make more sense and leave me open to reviewing other books like true crime and things that I do read. So that's a very valid point. There were a few people that said that as well. And then Lydia's Books of Terror, you know, as my husband so graciously put it, Lydia is my real name. He had to remind me. But it is like a cool name that fits the vibe of my channel. I mean, everyone knows Lydia Dietz, and I think that that's a very cool thing. I've been accused often of using a fake goth name, but that's not my goth name. That's my real name. So it fits. Lydia's Books of Terror. It's not too long. That was one worry too. So I spoke at length with my patrons. There was like, you know, I always think of like spoke at length. It took a few days for the conversation to happen, but it was only a few exchanges. But yes, bounced it off patrons, bounced it off longtime listeners, bounced it off longtime supporters. So Lydia's Books of Terror is what we're settling on, and I like it. I actually like it. It'll take me a bit to not say typical books, and if I do say typical books, apparently that's cheeky, so that's fine. I might not want to say anything, just like I did today. Hello, today I would like to talk about books. Surprise, surprise. But yeah, some of the stats, speaking of books, statistics here. I read 6 books so far in June, which is a little more than I even thought that I had. It's more accurate to say that I finished 6 books in June. I bought 30 books this year, 3 of them in June. So I haven't been buying as many books. I'm sure lots of people have noticed. And I've never been like one of those massive haul booktubers either. I like this sort of vibe. And these books were kind of unexpected. I'll get to them in a second, but on with the stats update. I'll do an annual wrap-up at the end of the year, but I have 1 arc on the go and 1 hopeful for July. I've been pretty much hitting my 1 arc advanced reader copy for review per month, but I haven't reviewed all of them because some of them I've DNF'd, some of them I just plainly didn't enjoy and shared the review only with the publisher or writer. I've read 8,207 pages approximately, which sounds like a lot. I don't know. pages are weird because something like Carrie Moira, that's 200 and some pages. The text is very big. It's probably closer to 300 pages, but the text is really, really big. And then Endless Night, something like that, it's like 460 pages or something. The text is very, very small. So who knows what the word count is. One of the statistics that keeps surprising me is that I've read so many books from big 5 presses. I really thought I read more small press, independent, and self-published stuff. I haven't read any self-published books this year, which surprised me, because if you asked me a year ago, do I read predominantly big 5 publishers, I would say no, but that's wrong. I don't read as many ebooks typically, but I read ebooks when I'm waiting for stuff to get done at work or on a commute. My commutes have been pretty rare, actually. I've been working a lot more from home, and I don't read as many ebooks at home. I opt for physical books. And I have been extremely busy at work, so there hasn't been any downtime, and I work through my lunches a lot when I used to pop open an ebook on my lunch. So I haven't read as many of those, but it doesn't seem to be really impacting my books read. I have acquired 30 books this year and read 36. So even though those aren't the same books exactly all the time, and I'll be adding more to the backwards bookshelf soon, it's good to know that I've read more books than I've bought. I'm really curious. I should look at other booktubers that do statistics and see if that's true for most of them. So far, the statistics experiment continues to surprise me. It's still a really fun way to track my books. I've been tracking them far more accurately than I ever did in Goodreads, but I'm going to have to update Goodreads because I haven't. I don't know how far I am on my challenge. I've picked about 52 books, hopefully reading a book a week, which seems like a pretty good amount. And let's be clear, 12 books a year, 5 books a year is fine. You don't need to be reading, 100 to 300 books per year to be a fan of literature. But I think the idea, knowing that I can pretty easily read a book a week, 52 seems like a good number. I don't know. I'll have to do the math to see where I sit. It seems like 36 is just over halfway, so I think I'm doing good. Now for acquisitions, like I said, I'm not buying a lot of books, and these books were a surprise. I didn't really plan on going to a bookstore. There happened to be a bookstore where we went, and where we went was Watson's Mill, because I am a Lisa Simpson at heart and got very excited to go to the mill. And I didn't want to see them grinding the flour because it's awfully loud. Maybe some year I will return and see that, because we are going to return to visit the Dickinson House Museum, which is also on the grounds of this vibrant historical town square of the little village of Watson's Mill in Manotick, Ontario, near Ottawa. And it's really picturesque, really beautiful. We saw a great heron and probably a black swan. Just very beautiful riverside, picturesque, turn of the century mill. And if you're interested in mills, I mean, this is the one to go to. We did get some honey oat bread from there, and there is a little bookstore that helps support this area. Now, lately, it seems the city of Ottawa has decided that the mill is surplus land and could be sold, which makes absolutely no sense because it is a historical attraction, and it is as they say, the beating heart of Manotick. So it's just an interesting saga. So I wanted to go there, donate money, because they take donations for the tours. I'm going to return there and donate more money. And when I saw the bookstore, I thought, well, I'll go spend some money on books. It was only like $4 and $2 or something like that. Very inexpensive. But I found Go Ask Alice by Anonymous. I remember babysitting for this couple once. I saw this on their bookshelf, and it looked ominous. I was a horror reader. I thought, ooh, Go Ask Alice by Anonymous. Ominous Anonymous. And they said, oh, no, it's not horror at all, but you should read it. But we're not saying that you should read it because we think that you should read this. You'll know what we mean when you read it. I'm like, okay. So from what I understand, Anonymous, this is not written by Anonymous. This is a propaganda book, but it is a diary of a young girl that gets falls into the wrong crowd, so to speak, and experiments with drugs and has a bad go of it. And everyone she knows has a bad go of it. And it's very like post-Manson family, pre-satanic panic. And I really wanted to get my hands on a copy of this, so I'm glad that I found pretty much the exact same copy, it seems, that I had read, maybe. So yeah, it's a nice addition to the collection at a good price. I will probably reread this sometime in the summer, because even if I do read or not read the whole thing, we'll see how riveting it is still. I want to get my hands on Michelle Remembers quite badly. It started when she was served a soft drink laced with LSD in a dangerous party game. Within months, she was hooked, trapped in a downward spiral that took her from her comfortable home and loving family to the mean streets of an unforgiving city. It was a journey that would rob her of her innocence, her youth, and ultimately her life. Spoiler alert. It's interesting. It's told in a diary format. Yeah, I remember really being riveted by this. It was a page turner for me in my teens. So if you've read Go Ask Alice and found it a page turner when you were younger, or if you read it when you're older, let me know in the comments how it hit you, because I'm very interested to hear. They had a whole lot of Chuck Palahniuk books there, like a lot. They had a really, really good selection of thrillers and such. So if you're very interested in thrillers, they have a huge selection. They don't pick books. They don't, take calls for orders. It's very physical, this little bookstore. But if you live in Ontario, might as well make a drive to Manotick to visit not only the Cool Mill and Dickinson House Museum and all the other little things they have going on there, not to mention restaurants and stuff. There's a lot going on in Manotick that way. It's a cool little day trip. Stranded by Bracken MacLeod. I found this within the horror. They listed the genres that they typically stock at this place, and I didn't see horror on the list, so I didn't have high hopes. But yeah, they did have quite a few horror titles, and they did have quite a bit of Clive Barker, quite a lot of Stephen King, and this book. So yeah, very excited to get to this. Badly battered by a punishing storm on their way to resupply an oil company drilling platform, the crew of the Arctic Promise find themselves sailing blindly without functioning navigation or communications equipment. Lost and unable to call for help, they push ahead into unfamiliar waters as an ominously thickening fog envelops them. One by one, the crew fall prey to a mysterious illness. Ailing from debilitating headaches and nosebleeds, the weakening sailors begin to see shadowy figures haunting the ship. Yeah. That's definitely for me. I really am excited for this. So, I might save this for the winter because it sounds wintry. I'll double check and see how wintry it is. Who knows? Maybe we'll read it in rainy November when, there's not a lot else that really stands out, because it's not a ghost story for Christmas and it's not a beachy beach read or fall vibes, so to speak. So we'll see. It looks pretty November-y to me. So that is it for this week. Thank you very much for watching. If you are one that voted on the Patron Picks poll, or of course the name change to the channel, thank you ever so much for your input. I hope you enjoy it, and of course let me know what you're reading in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching, and have an ooky spooky day.